I am terrible at this, but we're doing it anyway. So, hi, my name is Gyro. I like reading. I also like making films, recording, making YouTube videos. So, recently, I have read the first book of The Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, and it was an amazing book, is the best way that I could put it. I mean, more people, definitely more popular people. I'm just making my YouTube channel like yesterday, have reviewed and looked at this book far more than I have, and I just recently finished it. I finished it about, I think it was yesterday. Yeah, I finished it yesterday. I spent the entire day, I've never spent this long reading straight, just barely getting up from one spot and just reading. I spent from 12 p.m. all the way to fucking 10:30 at night reading this book because it was just so much fun. I was at the final probably 75% of the book at this point, like when I finished it, or like when I got to the point that I was like, okay, I'm gonna finish this book today, and then I just went through it. And it's very much, I've read only Mistborn, of the first Mistborn book, Final Empire, and then I also have read Well of Ascension. I'm currently reading Hero of Ages, and then I just finished The Way of Kings, because after I finished Well of Ascension, I started Hero of Ages. I needed a break, so I decided a 1,200 page book would be the break that I would have for I think Hero of Ages is 400 pages. I'll put a thing on the screen for like how long it actually is. This book was so much fun to read, and on some level I don't understand why people say that The Way of Kings, or at least the Stormlight Archive, isn't like a good spot for people to jump into Brandon Sanderson and like specifically his weird world and like the Cosmere. I do agree that Mistborn is a very good introduction, like a very good solid introduction, not just to Brandon Sanderson as a writer, but also just to the world of Cosmere. It definitely helped, but I felt like the way that The Way of Kings was written is very well-rounded and very user-friendly, in my opinion. I mean, it could just be myself that I just felt like it worked because I've read Final Empire and I've read Well of Ascension, so like I've kind of gotten an introduction to Brandon Sanderson a little bit more, but it didn't feel as like people were like I was being told by people that this book is like confusing and difficult. It's like similar to Game of Thrones, but I was like, it's not as like complicated, and like there's not as many people. Like there's so many characters in Game of Thrones. This book, I feel like its cast of characters is very concise, very held tight, and it doesn't even get confusing. Even with like, there's interludes in the book, so after each part, there's just a few chapters that are just like, hey, this isn't really enough for a POV character, but their story needs to be told at some point in the story of Stormlight, so here's these interludes. And I felt like even with the interlude chapters, everything clicked, because they would have an interlude chapter, and then usually the first couple of chapters of the next part would relate to the stuff that we learned in the interlude chapters. So I think it worked very well, honestly. I mean, like, I could understand maybe just the thickness of this book might not be the best thing for someone to like jump into for Brandon Sanderson. Like, I definitely recommend Mistborn in that regard, but I don't think people should be scared to read this book first. It's really good. I also was surprised at its inclusion of talking about mental health and depression and like I mean, it delves into things like honor, obviously, with like it being like a fantasy, like talking about knights and like people with swords and armor and battle and all that. That makes sense. But like it correlates, in my opinion, honor, at least for the character Kaladin, because Kaladin is the one that delves with the most like mental anguish through this book. With his character, it always felt like honor was kind of a subtext to his underlying issues that he was having, his depression, his thoughts of suicide during the book. It was interesting and very eye-opening. I was not expecting to feel as emotionally conflicting is the best word that I can think of while reading this book, and just like thinking of my own like mental health and my own personal struggles, just kind of relating to like Kaladin and like the things that he's going through, or not just Kaladin but like Dalinar and even Shallan. Like it was interesting to say the least, to see that connection, to see that aspect of what you would expect to be this very complicated high fantasy storyline about heroes and becoming great warriors, and like essentially similar to like with Mistborn, where like Vin is learning to become the hero of ages. I don't know if she is or not. I'm still reading the third book. I assume that she is. But it's interesting. I guess I should have expected it from Brandon Sanderson, since he kind of delves with similar themes in Mistborn, like Vin's sense of identity, and then that being translated, or similar concepts being brought up in Stormlight Archive. I really liked that. I thought that was really cool. I was not expecting it at all from any of the characters. I thought that it was just going to talk about like honor and fighting and the glory of battle and what does it mean to be a soldier, like stuff like that. Like I was thinking of it getting deep, but not like deep of just like what does it mean to just be myself and what can I do as a person to better myself and then also to better others, because that's kind of the interpretation that I got, at least from Kaladin's story. I also love Shallan's story. I made a meme, I'll put it on screen right here now, that I just thought it was so funny, because like Shallan, so in the story, she takes the Fabrial, the Soulcaster, and she's potentially using it, and it turns out that she uses it and a bunch of blood is splattered in her room, and it looks like a murder scene. And then Yasna comes in and she's like, "Hey Shallan, are you okay?" knocking on the door. So Shallan's first instinct, the first thing that she thinks of when like her entire plan, her entire lie, everything is about to shatter around her, I guess I'll kill myself. Like, it was probably one of the I mean, it's kind of dark. It's dark. I don't know if that's just a like reflection of my own humor, but I thought it was really funny. I was like, no way, like this is happening, that this is like actually happening, that this is a concept that is being allowed to happen before my eyes. Like, I was flabbergasted, to say the least, that that was the jump that Shallan took in the story. I also, probably one of my favorite parts, not the favorite moment that I had, but one of my favorite parts is close to the very end of the book. Elhokar is confronted by Dalinar, because Dalinar realizes that like, oh, Elhokar kind of thought that he was the one that was like trying to kill him, and there was this whole subplot about this the girth on this strap for Elhokar's horse that got damaged and cut, and everyone's trying to figure out who was the one that cut the girth, and it turns out Dalinar learns that it's actually Elhokar who cut the strap I think it's called a girth. That's what they keep on referencing, but I digress. He finds out that Alucard is the one that did it because on some level he thought that Dalinar was not taking his inquiries of their assassin being around seriously, and by doing so on a hunt with Dalinar kind of pinned the blame on Dalinar. So Dalinar goes, confronts him, beats the shit out of his nephew, which I just thought was funny. And then he tells Alucard that he's like, hey, you're gonna make me High Prince of War. We're going to change everything. We're gonna make everything great. Dalinar for 2024 presidential election. He has my vote. Anyway, and then at the very end, my favorite moment, or at least in that chapter, my favorite moment in that chapter is Dalinar looking back to Alucard, saying, yes, the rumors are true. I'm fucking your mom. He doesn't actually say that. He doesn't actually say I'm fucking your mom, but like, I mean, we know what's happening. We know what's happening. So that was funny. That was one of my favorite moments. Another moment that I think was probably one of my favorite moments. There's so many really good moments in this book that I can't pinpoint a direct favorite moment, because I think of one moment and I'm like, but this other moment was pretty good. I think top 5 in no particular order, just like top 5 in general. The moment with Dalinar and Sadeas. Dalinar confronting Sadeas, and then he giving his shard blade to Sadeas in payment for the bridgemen, and him talking to Kaladin about what is the worth of a human life. I thought that was so good. I started tearing up while reading that. I feel like I'm tearing up right now just talking about it. That was so good. Another favorite moment, not specifically a moment, but a line of dialogue, was from the prologue, or the prologue. I don't know what I was trying to put prelude and prologue together for some reason. It's from the prologue. I think it's the first line of the prologue. It says,
Zeth, son Vellano, truthless of Shinovar, wore white on the day he was to kill a king.
That line just there. I'll put the actual line on screen if I butchered it, but like that line in general was probably like, I read that for the first time, and from when I first started reading this book, because I started reading it like about a month ago and I've been kind of in and out reading it, and then I just like kind of locked in the last like week and then just sped read everything, just like non-stop, just reading this anywhere that I can go, like everywhere I was reading this book. But for the longest time, from the moment that I started reading the book to all the way to now making this video, I still cannot get that one line out of my head. And I think that just goes to show how good Brandon Sanderson's his beginning lines in all of his chapters are. It's just, it's so good. Love that. Another moment that I really liked was, it's a lot with Kaladin. But before we go to Kaladin, actually, another moment, Shallan learning what the Voidbringers are. I thought that was really cool. I have spoiled a lot of stuff already in this video, but I will not spoil what the Voidbringers are, because that was something that I was not expecting throughout the entire book. I was honestly thinking that there would be some connection to the Voidbringers and some like distant race that like Dalinar visited in his visions, something like this, that like what they actually revealed, who the Voidbringers are, and the catastrophe behind who they are in the current age of where the book is taking place, my jaw dropped. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. It was beautiful. So I won't spoil that. I'll spoil everything else though, because there's another moment before we go to Kaladin, because most of my favorite moments involve Kaladin, is Dalinar's last vision. It's like the last chapter of the book before Hoyd has his epilogue, is when he has his last vision and he sees kind of the potential future of what could happen in the world, and everything's going dark, and he's like talking to this individual who's sending these visions out, and then like Dalinar's learning that like, oh, you're not talking to me, like you never were talking to me, you were just sending these visions out, and I just interpreted what you were saying. I just tried to make sense of what you were like speaking, and like he finally clicks. And I think at the very end, the vision does speak to him directly, but sort of just answering a question that he would have probably already been asking. So it's not like still not talking to him directly, but still kind of talking to him directly, because at that point it actually starts answering specific questions. And I just think that it was kind of funny in my morbid fucking mind, that it was just like, it turns out that it's the Almighty, and his last lines of dialogue is just like, I am God, like, I am what you would call the Almighty. If you're hearing this, I am dead, and I am so sorry. Like, that is just a dreadful message to hear. As if someone is so devout in their religion, which I don't think Dalinar is that devout, but like he's says Stormfather, he talks the Ardents, like he's not against like religion. He's religious, but like hearing that from your god is probably one of the scariest things in the world. And I also kind of think just like the timing couldn't be funnier, because Dalinar finds out before he goes on his mission with Sadeas to the tower, he finds out that he's not mad, he's not insane. He actually, like, everything that all these visions were actually true. He finds that out. Then he gets betrayed by a friend that he was like, oh, we're becoming friends again, this is awesome. Gets betrayed, loses more than half of his entire army, gets rid of his shard blade, confronts Elokar, does all this fucking shit. He's probably physically and mentally exhausted, and then he's just like, hey, I'm your god, I'm dead. I was telling my roommate about this, and he equated it to like the moment where, like, in the Snapcube dub of the Shadow the Hedgehog dub, where like Satan's like, hey, it's me, Satan from the Bible. Like, I think we're just trying to like make light of like this like fucking dark moment in this fucking book, and I thought it was funny. I thought it was really funny. So that's another moment that I thought was like really cool. I love that. One of my favorite moments. And then now for the Kaladin moments. His first, or like when he went to the edge of the shattered, or like the plateau, when he was being consumed by the wretch and he was going to kill himself, was probably a very powerful moment. And when Syl showed up, I really enjoyed that moment, just because of how like just one simple act can change everything. And Syl, like, her talking and her bringing that leaf was something I just thought was so good. And then like Kaladin coming back, becoming Bridge 4 leader, and then going to each of the members of the Bridge 4 at the time and learning all of their names. And it was just the start of what will turn into be one of the greatest friendships in this story. And I thought that was amazing. Another moment that I really, really enjoyed, one of my favorite moments, was probably Kaladin his interaction with Hoyd, similar to the situation with him and Syl and him getting consumed by the wretch. I really like that. I also just love when characters just speak, when they just have monologues, when they just go into detail and they just start talking about stuff, telling a story. They just like, monologues are some of my favorite things, especially in books. I love dialogue in general, both in movies and in books, and I really enjoyed that moment. Hearing Hoyd and then those words resonating with Kaladin in that moment of what he needed to do, what he needs to be, was so good from someone who we don't know anything about. I don't know like spoilers, but I know Hoyd is not of he's not from Roshar. He has traveled around the Cosmere, I think. The extent of my knowledge of Hoyd extends from TikToks I've watched and this book, so take my words with a grain of salt. But that was probably one of my favorite moments. Another favorite moment, and probably because I think that's close to 5, there's the one with Seth, Shallan learning about the Voidbringers, Dalinar with Elokar, or Dalinar with the Almighty, Kaladin with the Wretch, and then Kaladin with Hoyd. I said 5. I was gonna name 5, but fuck it, I'm gonna name one more. The moment where Kaladin fights at the tower, and he's like consumed and like brings out the full power of like the Knights Radiant, is my assumption is what he did. When he like, Syl is like telling him like, speak the words, and then he says the words of the Knights Radiant, the second verse of the Knights Radiant. I can't remember exactly what he says, but it was really good. I really loved that moment. I loved it leading up to that moment. I just love Kaladin and Syl's relationship. Just the two of them together, they're just both so cute. I love Syl's like innocent demeanor and Kaladin just going through the ringer. So it's like, oh, you like have this character, he has a fucked up twisted mind, and then he has like fucking Hello Kitty girlfriend. Like, it's just fucking, it's so dumb and so cute, and I love it. And then like they work off of each other so well. I love it. But besides that, I'm excited to read Rhythm of War, I believe is the next book, or Words of Radiance. I can't remember which one is the next book, but I'm excited to read that. Probably not going to start on that book just yet. I want to finish the first trilogy of Mistborn before I move on to Stormlight, but I'm trying to catch up to leading up to the 5th book coming out. I know I'm not going to finish all of Stormlight before the 5th book comes out, but I want to get at least a good distance. I want to get at least another book of Stormlight before Winds and Truth comes out. So if you're thinking about reading this book, I highly recommend it. It's very good, and I just spoiled a bunch of it to you, so there's nothing else to do besides just read the book, because I bet my words mean nothing in the grand schemes of actually reading this. Yeah, thank you for listening to me ramble about this book. I am hopeful that I can post more book related videos in the future, and I hope you all enjoy this video. Bye.